Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last few years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Swedish craft beer scene, but they've built a very good reputation for themselves in that short time, and they have become best known, I would say, for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, although in recent times they have been experimenting a little bit more with lagers and other things as well, which is quite exciting to see. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I know these guys can do very well. It's a style we've had from them many times before. It's one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden as well, so needless to say I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head to Örebro, which is out to the west of Stockholm, and we're going to have a look at another beer then from Apex Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Metatron. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, if memory serves me correctly, this beer was released as part of the Lokalt Osmoskalligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2023. And yeah, it is supposed to be a very, very nice beer, this one. So yeah, let's crack on and see what this one has in store for us. We've had many New England double IPAs from Apex before, and it's always nice to try the new ones. This one has a little bit of a different hop bill, which we'll talk about a wee bit later on. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done it from Apex Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So yeah, just go into the channel homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things, and that is of course being added to very, very regularly. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at my notes then and tell you a wee bit about Apex Brewing Company once again. So, Apex Brewing Company, as I've told you before, were originally based in Nora to the north of Örebro, which is out to the west of Stockholm, but this company was founded back in 2017 by Daniel Gatchitz and Niklas Lundgren. So both of these guys are musicians, with Niklas having played in the band 59 Times the Pain, whereas Daniel played in The Voice of a Generation. But Daniel and Niklas together are responsible for the brewing operations of Apex Brewing, but there are some others involved in the company as well. This is Leif Karlsson, Ola Eriksson and Roger Hjelm, and they do mainly the kind of business side of things, if that makes sense. But in the early days, these guys started out with a 500 litre brew kit and 6 fermentation tanks, and they were just selling their beers in the local area before they got them into Systembolaget. The first beer that I tried from these guys was simply called Single Hop IPA. I want to say that was released in 2017 actually, and that was just a Citra New England Hazy Double IPA, but it was very, very nice. But in 2018 they brewed around 35,000 litres of beer with about 25 different varieties produced, all of which were New England Hazies, and then the following year in 2019 they brewed about 120,000 litres. But over the following years, these guys continued to build up their sales profile. They expanded, they got their beers out there across Europe and things, but then in the summer of 2021 they announced that they were going to move to a new premises in the Baytorp district of Örebro that autumn. And at this point they upgraded their 500 litre brew kit to a 2,000 litre system, they added several new tanks, and they continue to expand further. So the Apex beers are available across Europe these days. But as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 150 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. Like I said to you, the vast majority of these beers are New England Hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but in recent times they have been experimenting a little bit with different lagers and things like that as well. And they've also done a West Coast IPA for the first time very recently, which I reviewed a few videos ago, so you should definitely check that one out if you get the chance. And I look forward to seeing more different kinds of IPAs from these guys going forward. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Apex Brewing Company for the moment. One of the Swedish breweries that I would really recommend you check out if you get the chance. But yeah, if you love your New England hazy IPAs, then Apex Brewing are very solid. These guys, along with Fermenterana and Duck Pond, and I suppose Akia as well. Those four breweries are probably amongst the best New England hazy IPA producers at the moment. And of course, you do have the guys at Stigbergets, and the guys at Stigbergets, OO and Omnipollo, still really know what they're doing, and the guys at Brewski are still pretty solid as well, actually. But yeah, as I say, that's everything I can really tell you about Apex Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. You can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages as well to keep up to date with all the different beers that these guys have produced too. But check out the brewery website in the description below, as I said. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a wee look at the beer itself. So you can see the artwork on this one is very similar to what we've seen in the past from Apex Brewing Company. Plain silver top on the can there, but you can see the nice kind of Illuminati type things there. It looks like a kind of winged monkey. A winged monkey skeleton on the top of this one. But yeah, as you can see, Metatron, double IPA. You can see one of the usual slogans that we have from Apex Brewing Company: music, people and beer. But yeah, like I said, this beer was released as part of the Lokaltis Moskeligt for April of 2023 through Systembolaget here in Sweden. It was available a little bit before that in the likes of Kiosk over in Copenhagen and through Glassbank and .sa. But yeah, 8% New England double IPA this one. When I looked this beer up, the hop profile on this one is quite interesting. So we have Eclipse from Australia, which is a fairly new hop actually. About 16-17% alpha acid, gives you big kind of zesty orangey characters and also quite a lot of pine resin. Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand, 16% alpha acid, you know, kind of lovely gooseberry, white green grapey kind of notes, we know that one quite well. Victoria's Secret, about 12% alpha acid, big juicy mango notes, bit of passion fruit and pineapple, and Galaxy gives you a similar profile, but it's slightly higher on alpha acid, about 14 or 15%, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, basically this is an all Southern Hemisphere hopped beer, this one, which is quite nice. So an Aussie New Zealand New England double IPA this. So yeah, 8% ABV this one. If memory serves me correctly, this cost me about 60 Swedish kronor, so that is about €6, £5.50 sterling, somewhere in the region of $6.50 American, something like that. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Really looking forward to this. Let's do this. So there we are. That does look very nice. Feels like a wee while since I had a New England hazy from Apex Brewing, so this is quite nice actually. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer's poured with a full finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head. Very foamy though, you can see that with this one. It's very nice, kind of small bubbles on the head. They're lovely and foamy. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this beer, I would describe this one as being a really quite rich yellow, kind of akin to a mango juice. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different kinds of fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But yeah, lovely kind of rich mango juice colour, this one definitely. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, but overall it does look very nice. But as I say, lovely rich kind of mango juice colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put in as well will affect the colour of your beer too, but when it comes to IPAs, you don't often have to care about that, to be honest with you. But the level of haze in this one, it has got a little bit of a kind of soupy, gloopy character to it, but certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest I can remember having come across from Apex Brewing Company before. But still, remember, the haziness in these New England IPAs depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from brewery to brewery, beer to beer, and yeah, that is just worth bearing in mind. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's all about. So, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this one anyway, just not much in the way of visible carbonation either, but yeah, I think it's aroma time with this one. yeah, that's interesting. So, first impression of this beer is that it has quite a little bit of an almost farmhousey character to it, this one, and it feels a little bit more kind of dense and bready compared to some of the other Apex Brewing beers that I've come across before. But yeah, as I've always said, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to New England IPAs. So you've got the farmhousey, kind of yeasty character, the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more prevalent in American brewed New England IPAs in my experience. But then you've also got the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and the sweeter side of things as well. So yeah, with this one for me, this actually has a little bit more kind of farmhousey character to it, and quite a lot of the white bready notes. So yeah, I'm not getting too much of the wheat and too much of the oats. You can smell them a little bit, but they're certainly not the most kind of prominent things coming out of the aroma of this beer. But you've got a lovely kind of, you do have a lovely kind of floral aromaticity out of this beer. Like I said, you've got a nice kind of oily, grassy kind of thing in there as well. And then, yeah, you've got quite a nice kind of bright green component. You've got a smooth, malty backbone, little touch of sweetness, and then lots of juicy kind of fruity characters coming out of this one. All things that you would expect, of course, of a New England IPA and of an Apex Brewing Company take on the style, if we can say that. But yeah, let's break the aroma down and just describe it a wee bit more in depth and see what it's all about. So, the backbone of this beer then, for me, the backbone of this one, you've got a lovely little bit of kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. So yeah, a lovely little bit of fresh white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. There's definitely a little bit of woodiness to this beer as well. I get quite a bit of woodiness in this one compared to what I've had in other Apex Brewing Company beers before. Absolutely a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker. Yeah, so Jacob's cream cracker, a little bit of Apex, or a little bit of, let's say a little bit of bread crust for sure, a little bit of wood, but then yeah, you start to get the bready notes above that. So yeah, for me, the bready notes in this one, there is a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready sort of thing, but other than that, it's quite a soft and almost fluffy white bready character that comes out of this beer, which is interesting. So yeah, definitely getting some of that for sure. And then you can smell, the more that I smell of this beer, the more I start to get some of the wheat coming out in the back of the nose. There's definitely a wee touch of that wheaty, bitey character coming out of this one. So that's definitely there in the back of the nose. So yeah, a little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, a bit of brown bread in there, quite a dense white bread I say as well. Then you can smell the wheat just densifying everything out, and then you've got the oats on top of that. Now, as I've always said, oats are usually a good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. I suspect this beer is about 2 months old, because I know I kind of remember roughly when this was released through Apex, when it was released through Glassbank and things like that. So I think this beer at this stage is about 2 months old. So there's a nice little bit of oaty creaminess in there. There's a little bit of dryness as well, and then yeah, so there's a little bit of oaty dryness in there. There's a bit of oaty creaminess. Then you've got a wee bit of there's a little bit of a more kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, and a wee bit of biscuit as well. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. So yeah, the oaty notes are very thick. It's a little bit dry, and then yeah, as I say, so you've got the oaty creaminess, a bit of drier oaty notes, some smooth wheaty note character in there as well. White bread, brown bread, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, kind of things you would expect actually. Yeah, the way this beer goes together is quite interesting, absolutely. But yeah, definitely more of a kind of, I think the more that I smell this one, the more I would say that this is a kind of wheaty leaning New England double IPA, this one. So yeah, that's quite interesting actually. As I say, you've got your 6 things to think about with New England IPA. So this one's got a bit more farmhousey character to it, but it's also got a little more of a kind of wheaty nature too. But in terms of the hoppy side of things then, let's look at the green component of this beer. So for me, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, but not too much. But there's quite a bright, and it's quite a wet green component to this one. So you've got nice big bright floral aromaticity to it. You've also got the kind of grassy sort of things. But yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. As I've always said, when it comes to IPAs, there are 3 different kinds of hopping. Early addition hopping, which takes place in the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. And you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that gives you all flavour and aroma. So New England IPAs tend to use the latter two, or tend to rely on the latter two, we should say, whereas West Coast IPAs use all 3, and that's why West Coast IPAs have a deeper and danker green component to them than New England's. New England's tend to have a brighter note, of course. But yeah, for me, quite a little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of this one. Quite bright as well, nice zesty grassiness there, but the green component overall is quite wet. So yeah, the way this beer goes together is really, really nice in that sense. So yeah, quite a wet green component actually. On the fruity side of things, this one's quite interesting. I have to say, I don't find the fruity side of this beer overly pungent actually. It's quite hard to kind of separate the fruity notes in this, so let's just see. So you can absolutely get some of the kind of ripe mango-y notes from the Victoria's Secret and the Galaxy in this one. There's a bit of the passion fruit in there as well, and some kind of pineapple-y notes, but for me it's quite a ripe mango on the tropical side of the beer. But yeah, you do get that oily gooseberry, white grapey thing from the Nelson Sauvignon as well, and I think that's quite prominent, and I think the kind of smoothness of that side of the beer is what's kind of given the impression of it not being too pungent aroma. But you do get I do get quite a nice juicy orange in the top of the nose as well. But yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty nice. So gets a thumbs up from me. Takes a little bit of time though, just to let your nose pick out the fruity side of things. So yeah, the way that goes together is really very nice. Yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll have a wee look at it properly then. So yeah, the Metatron 8% New England Double IPA. As I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck in. But yeah, we'll have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. Metatron Double IPA, New England, 8% ABV, Apex Brewing Company in Örebro. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, pardon me, just got a little bit of stuff the wrong way, down the wrong way there. Yeah, this is quite interesting, this one actually. Yeah, for me, it does have a wee bit more of a kind of farmhousey, yeasty, grainy type thing going on this one actually. I'm getting a bit more of that in the malt base of this one. Sometimes you can get that depending on what yeast you use. So yeah, that definitely is quite interesting with this beer. It has got more, as I said earlier, as I suspected it would have from the aroma. It's one of the more kind of farmhousey and yeasty leaning ones from Apex, but it does give you a lot more wheaty and bitey character compared to what you'd think from the aroma. So that's worth pointing out as well. But yeah, this is interesting for sure. Quite a creamy, farmhousey and wheaty leaning New England Double IPA. This one, a lot more piney resin and dankness to it than I would have thought. But when I think about my experience of Eclipse in the past, it kind of makes sense. and you've got a nice oily fruity character to this one. But again, another very, very solid New England double from Apex Brewing, and you kind of wouldn't expect anything less of these guys if you know what they're, if you're familiar with them, we should say. So, yeah, let's try and break this beer down then, and see what it's all about. So, middle third of your palate, the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely kind of fresh, white bready bread crust sitting in there. So yeah, that forms the backbone of the beer. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of that kind of woody character coming out of the beer. So yeah, grainy bread crust, a little bit of woodiness in there. On top of that, there's definitely some kind of Jacob's cream cracker type notes coming out of it. So yeah, for me as well, in that middle third of your palate, like on top of the kind of crackery layer, you start to get a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready note in there. So yeah, a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready kind of thing. Above that, there's a little bit of there's a fluffier white bread, but the white bread still does have some kind of density to it. I think that's fair to say. So yeah, like a more dense white bread sitting in there. Then you've got the wheaty layer sitting on top of that, and the wheat has a little bit of bitiness and a little bit of dryness coming out of it as well. So yeah, that's quite interesting. So yeah, a little bit of wheatiness, a little bit of dryness in there. So yeah, that is quite interesting, this one. So you can feel the wheat has a little bit of zip to it in this beer, which I wasn't really expecting from the aroma. But then above that, you can feel the oats, and if you go down the middle line of your tongue there, you can feel the oats are kind of wet and creamy. And as you go out toward the edges of your palate there, you can feel the oats show you a little bit of dryness. And I've always said, oats give you a little bit of an indicator of how old your New England IPA is. The creamier and smooth they are, the fresher the beer is. The older they are, the drier. The older the beer is, the drier the oaty character is. So you can feel a little bit of a mix of stuff going on in this one. In the dead centre of your palate, there is a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing going on, but that's really not too prominent in this particular beer. So yeah, you can feel that little bit of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch in this one, but really for me, this is more of a kind of, it really is more of a wheaty and farmhousey leaning New England IPA, this one. So let's have a wee look at that. On the border region between, middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. So you can feel it's like a kind of farmhousey white bread. But at the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the bread crusty character there. And as I've always said, more grainy and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate. And you can feel that with this one. You can feel the bread crusty green is a lot more prominent. Above that, you get the cracker, which is again drier. You get the wholemeal brown bready layer, which is a little bit lighter and a little bit more airy. So you get that little bit lighter, more airy sort of thing. Then you can feel the white bready character, the more airy and white bready character just sitting above that too. So yeah, the way that goes together is really, really nice in this one, and that gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, so above the white bready note, you get a wee bit of a yeasty bitiness, as I said. Then you've got the kind of farmhousey yeasty character, and for me, the kind of yeasty bready character that you get in this one has a little bit of a kind of like farmhousey brown bread. There's a wee bit of honeycomb in there, and it just feels a little bit more grainy and dry. But generally speaking, the more that I drink of this beer, the more wheaty and bitey it gets, and the more bitter it gets as well. This certainly strikes me as a more bitter New England IPA. And I do wonder, maybe they've used, because of the pine resiny qualities of the Eclipse, maybe they've used a little bit more early edition hop in this one and used Eclipse as that early edition hop actually. But Nelson Sauvin, if you use it in the early edition as well, it's going to give you these big piney notes, and Galaxy is capable of that too. But yeah, definitely you can feel in the back third of the palate the flavour is taller, then as you come further forward into the middle through your tongue it just condenses down and sort of squashes together. So yeah, that's quite interesting with this beer. But that's the malty and yeasty side of things covered. Let's look at the hoppy side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, definitely a little bit of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, big sort of pine resiny character out of this one. Big sort of, big sort of dry, bitter pine resiny note coming out of the beer. Yeah, so sort of big bitter pine resiny note coming out of this one. But yeah, earthy, big. That pine resiny note really does linger into the aftertaste, but you can feel this beer has a good bit more bitterness to it than what we've had from Apex Brewing Company in the past. But yeah, that comes out right as you move toward the front corners of the palate. There's maybe a little bit of a spicy floral aromaticity there as well, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and grassy, and it's got a little bit of, it's like a wet grassy note to it, but it's got a wee touch of zestiness too. But let's look at the front third of your palate with this one and see what the fruity side of things is. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of bready build up there. It's like a kind of mix of white bread and brown bready build up. The base of that front third of your palate, there's a bit of more grainy bread crust in there, a bit of cracker, then the smooth white bread, and then above that you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So we'll focus on that. Yeah, for me, the fruity character in this beer is kind of what you'd expect, like at the back of that front third of your palate. There's a bit of that strong grapefruit which kind of keeps it kind of mixes in well with the wheaty bitiness and the big sort of piney resin that you're getting out of this beer. So it's quite a strong flavour, this one. But as you move further forward on that, you get a little bit of passion fruit and then a really kind of ripe mango. And as you reach the middle, of that front third of your palate, you've got a more kind of pineapple-y. You do get a little bit of an apricot note underneath, but then the kind of juicy pineapple-y notes on top. So the kind of juicy mangoes for me are going to come from both the Galaxy and the Victoria's Secret. So keep that in mind. But then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more about the. It is definitely more about the Nelson Sauvin and the Eclipse in this one. So you can feel the oily gooseberry, white green grapey thing. As you move further forward, you can feel that oily white green grapey base from the Nelson Sauvin in this one. And as you reach the very front tip of your tongue, there's a little bit of an almost limey thing mixing in with the more zesty, grassy side of the beer. But above that, you get this really ripe, zesty orange, which will be from the Eclipse. So if you know these hops, this beer kind of isn't really doing anything surprising in terms of the fruity character, but the grapefruit, I would say, maybe is a little bit more prominent than you might expect. And I have to say, I think we've covered everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer, but this is certainly one of the more bitter New Englands that I've come across from Apex Brewing, and it kind of reminds me actually of some of the more old school New England IPAs that you'll find, say some of the ones from, like Lawson's Finest Liquids and stuff like that. It really has, it's got a bit more of a kind of West Coast level bitterness to it, this beer. So it's got a bit more wheaty bitiness, a bit more kind of piney resin notes thanks to the presence of the Eclipse, and then you've got the grapefruit in there as well. So yeah, a few interesting things going on with this beer, absolutely. Yeah, I like this. It's interesting, this one. It certainly has made me think, although I would say this doesn't strike me as the most kind of balanced Apex Brewing Company beer, but definitely one of the more bitter ones. I thought it was going to be more farmhouse in the beginning, but certainly it's more bitter, and pine resiny and stuff like that. So that's interesting. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off this review, I would say that this beer, yeah, it's kind of top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation's quite smooth. This beer does have a bit of creaminess to it, but it has quite a bit of dryness and bitterness as well. A little bit of cleanliness too, which is interesting. But then, yeah, you've also got a little bit of you've got quite a lot of bitterness to this one. I would guess that this is like 70 or 80 IBUs. I think this is West Coast IPA level bitterness that's in this one. You get a hell of a lot of pine resin there, and that lingers into the aftertaste and mixes with the kind of pine resiny notes out of this beer. So that's worth paying attention to. On the on the fruity side of things, for me, you get more and more. I get more orange out of this beer the more that I drink of it. But yeah, it's quite oily with the orangey and the kind of gooseberry type things. But then you do have a wee bit of a more tropical fruit character behind that, which is worth paying attention to as well. So yeah, there's quite a few interesting things going on in this beer, and so it gets a thumbs up from me in that particular sense. But yeah, on the I think on the overall, the malty side of things, it's kind of grainy underneath. It's a bit smooth in the middle, and you've got a wee bit of oaty creaminess and on top of that. But it's not a very sweet malt base, this one. This is really a more bitter and wheaty New England IPA, this one. But it certainly doesn't strike me as the most balanced Apex beer that I've had before. I think that's absolutely fair to say. It's interesting to try something a wee bit different, but definitely one of the more bitter and piney New England IPAs that I've had, and it seems a little bit more old school, such as Lawson's Finest Liquids, or maybe some of the things from Alchemist as well. So yeah, interesting beer, this one, that certainly has made me think a little bit. But I think we can leave it at that for this review, to be honest with you. This one is the Metatron, a double IPA, 8% ABV, from Apex Brewing Company in Örebro, just out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. Always nice to return to these guys. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Apex Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slange, Skål, cheers, see you guys in the next review.